let's just do a little bit of warm up. Okay, next slide. What you will see is just some indication, okay, of how you guys are feeling this afternoon. Okay, you can use the chat box or you can use the annotation toolbar on Zoom. You can tick, okay, where somebody feeling curious here. If you need help with the annotation toolbar, you can mouse over. It's on the either the top or the bottom, depending on whether you're using a Mac or a PC. Okay, you can use a Jolene. Okay, Regina is feeling great. Okay, oh, somebody is feeling blah. All right, let's hope after this session you will feel blah, okay? A mix of the four, Jackson says, sometimes curious, moments you're excited, wow, sometimes great. Very nice. Very energetic, right? Okay, right, so can we have a sense of where we are connecting from? I'm dialing in from Singapore. Most of us from Singapore. Myrene, hi Myrene, welcome. I didn't see you earlier, good that you have joined us. Okay, we have a few more people connecting now. Let's give them a moment, okay, for them to connect. Wow, we have a lot of attendees from Singapore. That's really nice. Hi, Fauzrina and Azalea. You can unmute yourself. Okay, we're just trying to find out where we are all connecting from today. Myrene, you're Singapore. I thought you were calling from Philippines.
I am Filipino, but I'm in Singapore at the moment.
Okay, that's nice.
Thank you.
Okay, Azalea and Faustina. Where are y'all calling us from? Connecting with us from?
Hi, I'm Fazrina from Kuala Lumpur.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Hakima. Hello, Hakima.
Hi, I'm Hakima from Brunei.
Brunei. Okay,
Yeah.
welcome to the session. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too as well.
Okay, so most of us are actually Southeast Asia, yeah? All right, so let's see which industry are we working in. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Your commercial, financial, healthcare. I know some of us are from, some attendees here are from healthcare. Any from manufacturing, comms? Yeah, healthcare. You can use the annotation toolbar for those who have just joined us to indicate. Manufacturing, we have some from technology. Who is from technology? Could you share a bit more of the company that you're working from?
I'm not currently working, but I spent about 27 years in IBM.
Oh, I see. Hi, Jackson. So that's from you, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have also another new attendee joining us, Heidi Zaino. Welcome, Heidi.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm from Perbadanan Taib.
From where again?
Brunei.
Brunei. Nice. We have another attendee here from Brunei as well. Okay, great. So fantastic. I think we have a nice mix of attendees here this afternoon. Okay, so I will, there's some echo here. Let me try to see if I can mute anyone. Okay, I think it's better now. Are you guys hearing me okay? All right, okay, so Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over the session to our speakers, but let me first introduce our speakers, okay, for this afternoon, who's going to help us through the conversation this afternoon. We have Jerome. Jerome has more than 20 years regional experience in HR, business partnering, and organizational development. He's also a skilled HR professional in senior leadership roles across Asia, okay, and also in EMEA region. He is a trained coach and has more than 100 hours of training, coaching sessions with corporate leaders, okay? And he is actually your facilitator for the program, L&D as business partner, okay? Welcome, Jerome.
Thank you.
Okay, and our second speaker for this afternoon is May. Okay, May is regional head at Cipd Asia. Okay, she has worked as a professional development and education sectors for over 15 years. She relocated from UK to Singapore, I think about 7 years ago, to help basically Cipd to establish her presence in Asia. She's really our Cipd content expert. So this afternoon, you'll be able to hear from the two of them more on the content as well as the what you can expect out of this program in L&D BP. Okay, so I will hand over the session to May. All right, over to you, May.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you for that lovely introduction and a warm welcome to all of you this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join us at today's preview. So just to give you a little bit of structure in terms of how we're going to progress, we'll start off with a bit of a conversation, which is between myself and Jerome around L&D's relevance in today's world. We'll then take a look at the program and how it's being delivered, and we'll end with some Q&A. Now, this is going to be rather interactive. So at any point in time you have a question or you want to engage with us, feel free to use the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and would love to hear from you. Okay, so it's just to see it as quite a casual conversation amongst friends with a little bit of a sales angle later. So moving on then, I thought what I would do is set the scene a little bit for all of us. So the world we know, or the world as we know, is changing faster and more furiously than ever. We're faced with unprecedented levels of uncertainty. Businesses are having to relook at how they can meet their top line targets, whilst at the same time control their bottom line costs. Does this all sound rather familiar to everyone? COVID is a catalyst for change, an opportunity to reset, in my view. And for some of us, we are forced to have to reset as well. Many people do believe that COVID-19 has actually sped up the adoption of technology. Tech transformation, all of that malarkey has been top of priority for most organizations in the current time. For HR, these past half a year, maybe a bit more now, has been one of the most challenging periods, if not the most challenging periods that some of us has faced. And I think those of you who are joining us from the healthcare industry can probably relate to that quite a fair bit. There's new ways of working, there's constantly changing business models, which means we in HR have to relook at the workforce compositions, as well as redefine how we do things. So for example, we need to think about how do we now engage employees through virtual means, because we may not always be able to see them. How are we going to be able to manage performance remotely in some cases? How do we continue to drive growth through people? How do we rewrite our policies and procedures? Just a few areas to name a few. So business as usual may not be a plausible way forward because we won't be going back to those pre-COVID days. So we do need to learn to be more flexible, more adaptable, so that we can manage risks and ensure that business continuity is there and we can continue to drive productivity. We need to think about how we create safe working environments for employees, how we can be effective in terms of the flexible working arrangements we put in place, split teams, how do we manage workers remotely, and how do we motivate and keep productivity up remotely in a lot of cases. These are all very real issues that we're faced with. And on top of all of that, we still have our aging workforce demographics. So a little bit of a statistic to share with you. By 2050, so that's what, not that many decades from now, by 2050, 62 countries in the world will have a third of its population aged 60 or over. So this will massively impact the way that we work and how we work. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to bring Jerome into the conversation. Hello, Jerome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, May.
So I guess my first question to you, with all of the stuff that's changing and all of that context and aging workforce and uncertainty, tell us a little bit about the latest developments in learning, in L&D, that will help us.
The latest development, I guess you've been quite comprehensive in how you introduced what's happening around there. So given the scenario you're painted, what's really challenging the L&D is they need to get very close to the business. All right, so change has been taking place, but the speed at which it's taking place, that's significant. So therefore, L&D really need to business partner and understand the business needs. No longer being a kind of a support function, they get involved into the business and provide solutions which are more strategic in nature. And given all the constraints and the economy, shrinking, our deliverables needs to be really impactful for the business. All right, bottom line is very important, and therefore there'll be a bigger question of why invest in L&D at this point of time. All right, so I guess this is the best time for L&D to truly business partner with the businesses. Hope that explains and puts the context a bit more.
Yep, so what I'm hearing there is because of the speed of change that's happening, business partnering allows us to be more in tune to the business needs. It also sounds like from what you're saying that L&D needs to step forward out of being a support function and being a more strategic one in order to help deliver against business results by creating more of the skill sets and capabilities that the organization needs and to make a difference. Does that sound like a fair summary?
Absolutely.
Lovely. So I guess what I would add to that is it sounds a lot about how L&D can help organizations to unlock untapped potential for the organization. So with that in mind then, let's say we have organizations whose L&D functions are still in their infancy. What advice would you give these organizations?
I guess everybody's catching up to the change. So whether you have been an L&D function for 20 years or you've just started one, you need to step up to the next level. All right, and technology is helping most of the L&D functions to change. So if you have the strong L&D function, you need to relook again at how you're operating. So for those who are starting infancy stage, then you got to understand the L&D of the past and the future is going to look a bit different. I would say embrace technology, become a performance consultant rather than a training delivery person, right? And it's important to think about L&D as a solution provider. And so you will look at more than just training as a solution, right? So it's a kind of a performance consulting role that you're taking on board. So for those in the infancy change, all the best. You're probably at the right spot to make a change for the company.
I think that's a really interesting term you use there, performance consultant. How would you describe a performance consultant?
That's a very good question because we always talked about performance, but nobody looks at what performance is, right? And so it's very important to drive performance from the business perspective. So this is where L&D professional, not only, we are gone the path of becoming a strategic partner to the business, but you need to go beyond that and also see your clients, your customers, all right? Gone are the days your business goes out, looks at what's happening with the changes, and then comes back to you and shares with you. Now, with the speed of change, L&D needs to be out there where the business is changing itself. And sometimes a really good L&D consultant or performance consultants will identify the changes that are taking place in the business scenario. All right, and in L&D and Cipd has got a very good article on the 10 shifts where L&D is changing. And you will see that's a very important article as well. They talk about the business changes. They talk about how the market, the participants are changing. They're no longer a passive trainee. They want to be actively involved. If not, they will tell you where the needs are to assess you. And most important, how you use technology to implement initiatives that's going to be targeted just in time and is going to meet individual requirements. That's important. So we're moving away from coming out with a curriculum, a training program, and one size fits all. We need to be quick in how we design. We need to be quick in how we deliver. We need to be really active in how we engage the participants.
Thank you for that, Jerome. So I think that takes us nicely then to talk a little bit about the program, since you started talking about CIPD's 10 shifts. So on the slide in front of everyone now is a little bit on the program itself. So the journey starts in terms of looking at the strategic role and contribution of L&D. And right there, you can see those 10 shifts that Jerome was just talking about. And it's about how you run L&D as a business function and how it's aligned to the business. We'll then move on to looking at managing and influencing stakeholders. So there's all the spin selling techniques, as well as how do you identify your stakeholders and how do you engage with your stakeholders in an efficient and proactive manner. Then we move on to how do you garner the skills and the capabilities to operate as an internal consultant. So how do you ask good questions and garner good insights? And then moving on to how do you now tie all of that back into the L&D process and being able to measure the ROI on your learning interventions. So with all of these components in mind, Jerome, I'd like to ask you, what do you see here as sort of the key highlights of this program? What's your favorite bits?
I guess all of them, and then to be honest, it all ties to each other. You cannot just leave one out, but it's all about starting with the kind of a broader strategic alignment, getting the strategic alignment with the business. And you can only do that if you can manage and influence your stakeholders. It was exciting to see in my last workshop where the participants felt that was the most, takeaway, where they're changing themselves to become a consultant. So that was, they're becoming an internal consultant and, asking the right questions. So that came up pretty well. And to revise again some of the concepts and, the L&D processes, the learning needs analysis, that's good because some of them have forgotten some of the practices, but more importantly, how to contextualize to today's world. Right, so principles are good. They stand the test of time, but contextualizing becomes important. And then finally, the most important question: are you worth the money? All right, are you delivering what you're supposed to deliver? And so, I guess the participants felt that now they can go back and show that for every dollar that's invested in me in the program, we will hit the bottom line as well. So all of them are important in summary, I guess. And it's the way we tie it up. It's where the whole workshop comes together, alive and contextualized to the individuals, especially.
Sounds exciting. So what kind of tools and frameworks can I expect to learn on this program?
Oh, you mentioned a few already, all right? So we will go back to the basic concepts, right from SWOT analysis, looking at external market. The one that a lot of participants, like I mentioned, was the SPIN model. The SPIN model is a really good consultant. It's an easy but very impactful model. The one that is really important about the SPIN, and I'm going to mention everything about the SPIN, but the needs identification, the implication, the needs payoff, these two sections becomes very critical for L&D, who typically struggle in identifying how effective their learning interventions are. All right, with this kind of a concept, you bring the end in mind early in the conversation. So that's another concept that's good. And of course, we'll discuss about how you measure effectiveness. And for those, who really need to show the dollars and cents, we'll go a bit more detail into ROI and, how to calculate them.
Wonderful. Right. So we're going to move on now to the next slide, which looks at the learning outcomes. So folks, there's quite a lot of learning outcomes here that you will get out of the the 2 sessions. So you get 2 times 4 hours. With Jerome, with some pre-work and in-between work as we go along. So have a read through. I won't go through all of them, but I do have a question for Jerome. So at the end of this course, Jerome, I've gone through this journey with you. How am I going to be different? How will I have transformed after this course?
Again, I'm going to use the last class experience because that ties back to people, right? So I see the participants, one, getting a new perspective of L&D. So that's really useful, Two, the engagement between participants sets them, kind of a context of what's really happening in the industry. And exchange of ideas is important, and not only among professionals, but different industries, and that's really good as well. And most importantly, how they can go back and ask the right questions and engage the stakeholders. That seems to be a kind of a real takeaway, because the confidence I find in the individuals has changed from the first day. They get clarity of what needs to be done in the L&D space as well. All right, so I'm not going to say they're going to be totally transformed, but perspective is going to change. They're going to go back with a few action plans, and they go back with a sense of confidence now that they can execute some of these action plans. So that's what they will take away. And you know what, guys, it's good that you get to see who's going to deliver the 2 days workshop. Seldom I have been to workshops where you get to see a test drive of the facilitator. So you can test drive me for a while, and then if you think this is what's going to work, sign up, right? So I'm doing a bit of sales, but that's not the idea what I'm going to do. But what I'm saying is take advantage of today's session, all right? Get to know me, figure out whether your needs will be met by interacting with me. Yeah, May, I hope I've not taken too much of a time there.
No, not at all. And I think that's a really good point. As you say, you don't get much opportunities where you get to test drive the trainer. So for another 15 minutes left, you can throw any questions that you want at the trainer. So do test away. So I like what you said there, because transformation is a big word. And I think what's realistic that we're going to get from this program is you're going to give us some good understanding of good concepts, and then how we can apply that back into our organizations by contextualizing it, and giving us some tools that we can apply. And I assume that during the class time, we'll have an opportunity to try these tools that you'll be teaching us.
Absolutely. I guess the whole program is structured in a way there's pre-workshop exercises where you got to think about the business issue. So I would like you to come in with questions, right? Look at the context, do the pre-works, and then during the workshop, we'll touch a bit about concepts, very much about how you're going to apply it, and then creating your action plans. We do that through interaction in breakout rooms. I'm sure most of you all have done Zooms. We go into breakout rooms. We have case studies. Between the 2 days, there's some kind of videos to watch, interactive. You get a chance during the 2 days break, or between the 2 days break, to think about more questions. Come back the next day and challenge me with more questions of how can I implement this, all right? And then as a wrap up as well, we give you a kind of a reflection tool and all the materials in the workshop so that you can go through the post-workshop as well.
So we also get a little bit of free coaching and consulting from you as well on the side.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to how the program is delivered then. So as you can see on screen now, this is a virtual program. So you'll start the journey about 1 week before the in-class session with Jerome, with some self-directed learning. So you'll get some reference materials to read, maybe some videos to watch, or a podcast to listen to. Then you'll go into the 4 hours of live instructor-led training with Jerome. So during this time, it's very practical. There'll be lots of discussions, peer exercises, group exercises. Then you'll have some in-between session work to do. That'll comprise of some reading or video watching or podcast listening, but also a little bit of exercises to reflect on what you've learned so far, but also some prep exercises for the next session. Then you'll have your second live virtual instructor-led session with Jerome for 4 hours, full of interactive activities again, and group work, etc. And you'll end with some reflective practice exercises and reading as well. So that's basically the whole virtual journey. So Jerome, my question to you. There are obviously some folks out there who may not have engaged in virtual training yet, or are still a bit skeptical of virtual training effectiveness. What are your thoughts on this?
Hey, if you're an L&D professional and you're skeptical, you got to get on board the bus. All right, I guess the statement is either you're on the bus or you stand in front of it. All right, so virtual is the way to go, using online blended. If the time comes when we can see each other, it's going to be blended as well. But I like to point out, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, there are 3 key factors. The content needs to be practical and it needs to be meaningful. And that's what we've got in these 2 days, meaningful, practical content for you. 2, it all begins with the learners, right? Whether you're doing a 5-minute session, 2 hours, or in a coffee shop, in a playground, if a learner has enthusiasm, comes with the right question, it's going to be an effective forum, right? So I'm going to put the ball back on the learners itself, right? You need to come there with real great questions and how to solve problem. Finally, it's about how we engage with each other, right? The conversation. Zoom is Zoom, you know, some take Zoom and put it differently, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's going to look different. And so how you engage with each other. In the last workshop, participants were engaging very, openly. You need to be a bit vulnerable. You need to share your thoughts. You know, it's okay to ask questions that you think that, everybody would have the answer. That's where it becomes important. And I guess as a facilitator is to push you a little bit more about thinking a bit harder. That's about it, right? So at times I will push you, I'll make you uncomfortable, but that's what learning is about. And so if you're an L&D professional, you need to go and sell that to all your employees. So get on board, it's called self-efficacy. Whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. So get on board and say, we can do this together. Thanks, May.
So one more question on the platform then whilst we're here. How do you, so if we were in class, right, obviously, we'd be doing stuff around flip charts, you can see us, you can engage with us, you can read our facial expressions, our body language, etc. How would you go about engaging us on a virtual platform?
Absolutely. So, getting videos on is really good. So we get to see that. All right. I'm using chats. For those who don't like to voice up, right? The chat has been pretty good. They like to type in and then they give their comments. There's always, during the sessions, they have thoughts, they bring it up. Breakout sessions are pretty good because in smaller groups, they're always engaging with each other and then they bring up the PowerPoint. So really, we've just gone from a face-to-face. The only thing is the touch and feel, but the rest of the interaction, asking questions, an introvert will be an introvert whether in a face-to-face class or in a virtual class. But I find sometimes for the introvert, it helps them a little bit. All right, the chats are something they can use. They can give me the kind of a reaction, thumbs up. All right, so they give me reactions. And so I get the kind of a feel that I'm engaging all of them. I wouldn't say it's the best platform. Likewise, in a face-to-face, it's not, it doesn't cover every area, right? You lose some people if you're going to lose them. All right. So, yeah, but it gives you a lot more opportunities to look at it. We've got a facilitator. I'm not going to do this workshop alone as well. All right. We've got a kind of we call them the directors, right? And it's very important that we have that role as well, because in the last workshop, there was one participant was uncomfortable with the virtual platform. We helped her through. She got better. And in fact, probably she took that out better because, it's not L&D subject, but it's getting very accustomed to the virtual environment, that she really thanked us because, at the end of the day, we want to go to the same place. We want to understand the concepts, take away action plans and implement. How we get there together.
Okay.
All right. So for anyone who's feeling uncomfortable, and the only way you can cure that is getting on board.
So it sounds like that there's still going to be tools there for you to use to engage with us, whether on screen, via breakouts, via chat boxes, or if we're comfortable to unmute and speak to you. But I do agree, because on some of the virtual trainings that I've been on, I found that the engagement levels have actually been quite high, because other than the people who are comfortable to speak and to unmute, the chat box can be very, very lively, because I think it suits, that's a mechanism that a lot of people are comfortable with these days, to type their thoughts and their views. But I've also noticed this format does allow a bit of anonymity, because when we're typing on screen, we don't necessarily know who's typed what. So I think for that, you do tend to get rather honest views and honest opinions. And again, it allows people to come out of their shell a bit.
Absolutely. And the peer-to-peer discussion that takes place on the chat page, that's interesting to watch as well.
Okay, so moving on then. So really, we're just going to finish our little segment before we move back over to Charmaine, who's going to cover the next steps, but also the Q&A portion. But I'd like to end this little bit by basically saying, taking a page out of Jerome's book there, the future is most likely blended. So start embracing it and be part of the movement. You are L&D practitioners after all. So Charmaine, back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Jerome. I felt very confident in this test drive. So I hope the rest also feel the same way. Before I open up to Q&A, I thought I'll just run through the course intake. We have two intakes coming up. One is in October and the other one is in November. You can see the dates on the slides there. There are early registrations that we will extend a different rate for participants who signed up for the classes. So the early registration for this LNDBP that's coming up in October actually has ended. But for participants who are here today, we're going to extend the early registration if you register by this Friday, which is 2nd of October. Okay. For those who are attending the November class, the early registration date will close on the 23rd of October. So you have some time for the November class, but for October class, if you intend to join us for October, do sign up by Friday to enjoy the special rate. Okay. With that, I also wanted to add a point on virtual learning. I think Jerome mentioned a few times that in the past runs for our virtual classes, for LNDBP, it was very fantastic that we have a lot of good exchange of ideas. Largely because in virtual environment, we get attendees from all over the world. Right? Really, we had attendees in one class from New Zealand, Dubai, Australia, and all different time zones. So it's really the power of being able to come together and share different perspectives from different markets. So it's very, I thought that's really something quite different from if it was a classroom environment, okay, where, yeah, the exchange and the thinking may be quite constrained in a sense. Okay, so with that, you can scan the QR code if you intend to register for the class. And I think we'll keep that slide there while we open up for question and answer.
So we have the first question come through. For Singaporeans, are there any government funding that can be tapped on? As far as I understand, for now, unfortunately, the program is not applicable for any government funding, I'm afraid. I'm also not sure whether it's possible for people to tap onto the Skills Futures credit, but maybe that's something that the CIP can maybe have a look at for you if that's an option. Second question, if we are considering a CIPD qualification in the future, does this add or get credit to that? Okay, good question. The qualifications and the masterclasses and short courses are actually separate. The reason being is that the qualification is very, very heavy on theory. So the way that the CIP qualifications are set, and it really depends, Myrene, whether you're thinking about a level 3 or a level 5 or a level 7 qualification. So if you can give me a little bit more info on that, that would be helpful. So the credits don't transfer through in that way, but what it will do is give you really valuable knowledge that's going to complement your qualifications, because it will give that more practical view and practical lens and application, where the qualification tends to be very deep dive and very theoretical.
I believe it's level 3, right, Myrene, that you're looking at?
Okay, yeah. So for example, on the level 3 CIP qualifications, if you were looking at the L&D one, so obviously we've got the HR track and the L&D track, but if you were looking at the level 3 L&D track, what you're going to be doing is deep diving into the entire L&D cycle. So what this program will give you is that more business partnering lens in terms of how the L&D function will be working with and partnering the business to get insights in order for you to create those interventions. Whereas the qualification is going to give you the learning and development theory behind things like learning concepts, motivation theory, and all of that. So it allows you to deep dive in the theory and concepts.
Thank you. I was on mute earlier. I couldn't participate. But yes, thank you. I've also heard, and I'm not sure if this is the right forum to ask, that there's going to be like a restructure of that qualifications program.
Yes, yes.
Next year.
That is
Okay.
right. Yes. So your information is spot on. So what the CIP does is, obviously, we're an organization that's been around for 107 years. Yep, since 1913. So obviously we can't be producing the same qualifications for 100 years, right? It would make us extremely not relevant if that was the case. So what the CIP does as part of our curriculum transformation, every 10 years or so, I would say, the qualifications will go through some evolution. Just like our competency standard, the CIP profession map also goes through the same transformation. So it allows us to make sure that the qualifications content is 100% relevant. So the next iteration is happening next year. There are, I would say it's not, there's probably about 20, 25%, 30% changes. But the structure and how the modules stack up will shift a bit. So if you are interested in the CIP qualification, do have a look at the new iterations. Obviously, if you're looking at L&D, all the stuff to do with learning technology is going to now be featured in it. Just like if you're looking at the HR qualifications, all the stuff to do with HR tech, how AI can be leveraged, how technology can be leveraged, things like RPA, all of that will be reflected in the qualification as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for me at this point? So I do have a question that's coming here. So one for you, Jerome.
Sure.
What's the difference between an L&D BP and a HR BP?
Okay, I guess it boils down to the specialization. So a business partner is a business partner. Fundamental skills is understanding the business and consulting with them, giving business impactful solutions. But an L&D is a kind of a specialization, learning and development interventions. Whereas the HR business partner looks at, recruitment, for example. L&D partner might do recruitment and selection training, but not necessarily the engagement of recruitment. So that's a kind of a broad distinction that I can see. But L&D itself, if you're an HR business partner like how I was, and if you don't have L&D specialization in a company, then you will realize that 70% of the time you are working on L&D initiatives, right? From coaching, training, developing people, succession planning, talent management, all literally falls under the L&D kind of a portfolio. All right, and the HR talks about compensation and benefit and retrenchment and stuff like that, the more sensitive. But if you're looking at organizational growth, and L&D is the kind of a business partner that's quite an impactful role to play there. Hope that explains the question.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope it does too, to whoever asked the question. But it does make me think at the same time, because it feels like the natural next step in evolution to me. Because if we look at HR as the generic banner, L&D across the globe is the biggest specialism area, right? So it makes sense that next stage of evolution now, that big specialist area now comes out to engage the business directly. And I think this plays very nicely with the terminology used earlier about being a performance consultant.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left before we end today's session, which I believe is due to end at 2:15. Any questions for us? Any further questions?
Very quiet.
Yes, it's suddenly a very quiet room.
Thanks for giving me the break. No, all honesty, I'm looking forward to this workshop. All right. I mean, every workshop I'm excited because, L&D is in the forefront, right? We build things, we make changes happen, and that's why it's called learning and development. And so that's very, very important. So I'm always excited to do a workshop because I learn quite a bit from the participants as well.
Oh, I do have one. Yeah. Sorry about that, Jerome. I've got one question that just popped in. So I've got someone who's looking to have this course being sponsored by their employer. And they said it would be easier if the course led to qualification credits, which unfortunately it doesn't. But how else can we help this person position the course strongly with their employer? So ROI on learning, Jerome?
Okay, so I guess if the person's already embarked into, evaluating this program, that's something driving them from the business perspective. So, I can give you a general answer, but this individual, if you want, drop us a note or an email, because it's important to, again, go back to what's the business drivers, all right? And L&D cost is minimal, all right? Sometimes as L&D professional, we put the stop. If you go back to the business, and that's where the spin model itself will help you look at implication, need payoff. If you take, some of the things I'll tell them, if you take the investment that you're giving, divide it by 365 days, can you imagine it's going to be a chicken rice per day? All right, with a chicken rice per day, what you can deliver to the bottom line, that's going to be significant. Right, so that's a broad answer. You can look at it in a different perspective, but start from the business perspective, what they are measuring from a business performance matter. What you're going to do, you need to tie it back to that. And it's a kind of a conversation, and it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? You come to this workshop, in one sense, you'll pick up the skill sets to be able to justify for all future courses as well. And also, I'm not trying to sell the program here, but it's a kind of I'm stuck, so yeah. So the fact, I'm going to be quite honest and clear, the fact that there's an interest for this program, there's something driving you from the business. So put your pulse there.
I'm going to weigh in here as well, because
sure, please.
As part of my consulting work and a lot of the conversations that I've had, one of the things that has become abundantly clear to me at the moment is a lot of businesses out there are having to do more with less. Okay, that's a given right now, because we're stuck in this COVID situation. A lot of organizations are, best case, they're on a headcount freeze. Worst case, they're looking at redundancies, right? Or they just don't have enough hands and feet to get the work done. This is the reality of the situation. So to me, being able to absolutely make the most of the people that you have in your organizations right now, and considering that we are all mostly tasked with reviewing our objectives and our targets now in very short time spans. So best practice at the moment is telling us that we should review our objectives every 3 months, because things are changing so quickly at the moment. So if we're going to look at where we are today and where we want to go, we constantly have to do a stock check of the skills and the capabilities that we've got in our organizations to make sure that we're equipping the people to drive the growth that we need in the organization right now. And we can't do that without L&D. If L&D is not equipped to do the learning needs analysis, to be able to identify and back it up with data to know that the difference that it's going to make to equip these people and to give these people the training, to give these people the learning interventions that they need in order to drive the business forward, I think it's going to slow growth. It's going to slow productivity for all of us. So to me, I see that as why L&D right now is more important than ever. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for putting it that way. It's comprehensive. Yeah.
Personal view.
No.
Okay. So
what about the rest of the participants? If there's time, maybe, some of y'all have already convinced your businesses, so you might have something to share. And that's the whole idea of interacting with each other. Anyone else there? Or are we all going through the struggle of trying to justify our existence?
Yeah, at the moment it sounds like it. We've got a couple of people that sounds like they're going to be on the course in October. We have one who's going to go back to position all of this to their employer. So we're going to have a copy of this on video. So do feel free to send this off to your employer. Any other questions we can help you with at this point?
We have attendees from, I think, is it Swire Properties or the Swire Group? Any questions from attendees from there? No?
Yeah, myself and Celine, we are from Swire Pacific Offshore.
Any questions for Jerome or for May? Or myself?
Myself, I'm actually a recruiter, and Celine herself is actually from the MBA. So it's quite interesting to see what's in for this workshop. So I think both of us will take it back with us, and then we'll consider to sign up either probably one of the sessions.
Looking forward, Reg, was that Reg or I couldn't?
Regina here.
Yeah, looking forward. And I've got quite a lot of experience with oil and gas, having served in Transocean, McDermott. So, you know,
Right.
if you guys join us, then can look at industry specific, and the oil and gas is changing quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerome.
Good. Thanks, Regina.
Welcome.
All right. So back over to you, Charmaine. So just from my part and for Jerome's part, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lovely discussion.
Yes.
We do hope to have the opportunity to see you hopefully again in future.